Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Outer Realm here on the Wednesday night. And we're broadcasting live on United Public Radio Network, UFO-Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 from the beautiful city of New Orleans. Just struggling through a few tech issues here tonight. So hopefully everything will keep going smooth. So we are fully sponsored by the amazing people at Folgers Coffee, who've been a part of our journey since day one. So thank you, Folgers. We appreciate you so very much. Also, big thank you to Dr. Snick, a.k.a. Justin Snicker, the sonic surgeon, for his contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro that you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on any of your favorite streaming platforms. Also, big thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes in the horror genre, but does some phenomenal commission pieces. So tonight, for the very first time, we welcome Michael Kameron all the way from the UK. He's staying up really late. It's about 2 a.m. right now. He's going to be discussing his book, High Strangeness, A Lifetime of Alien and Paranormal Encounters. I have to say, I did a sound check with this young man today, and sometimes you just meet people that are just pretty amazing. And this is one of those people. He's really, really amazing. He's very impressive. He's very knowledgeable, and he's been through a whole lot of stuff. So it's going to be really awesome just hearing what he has to say. So as we wait for him to come in, I see people are chiming in. Hello, 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 Ruth. Big hello, Karen and Chris. How are you? You behave yourself tonight, Chris.
I've been waving for 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm still blah blah blahing, but it's okay. Kind of the way it's got to go. Just major tech issues here tonight. I do not know what the issue is with all of this, but it's going to be a little bit of a battle. I think just trying to get through things. But don't ask me what is going on. I have absolutely no idea.
I don't know. My whole lens is off center. I didn't even notice that because when we sign into the studio, we're square,
right?
And then we go live and we're rectangle, so it throws off everything, right?
I know.
And it's like, and then it's flipped,
right.
I mean, this is over my right side, but I mean, everything's like flipped. So forget it.
Are you confused, Bubbles? Are you seriously all confused today?
It's one of those months. I would love to say days or week, but no.
Oh man, I know. I've just had all my email just suddenly say no. We can't do anything else. I'm like, what are you kidding me? I got more room on this computer. I don't know.
Well, we're almost back to school time. We can tell by all the damn commercials on TV.
Oh, I know. That's hilarious.
Just like,
we're there already.
Well, for me, it's social media because I'm more on TikTok than I am on television. But I'm just looking at this going, wait, isn't there like 3 weeks before they go?
Oh, man. Yeah. You would think so. But before you know it, we're going to just go through Halloween and end up in a totally other Christmas celebration.
Thank you for being here. Yes, it's late. I really am so honored when our guests come on live from overseas, because then they get to interact with all of you, and there's still, of course, their time is precious to us, and the conversation is just as important. it's just an added bonus, and it's nice that you can interact with them
It
as
is
well.
really nice. And
And it's good for
unfortunately, not
them.
everybody can do that. It
No,
makes it
I
really, really
can't.
hard.
I've
Yeah.
been there's a particular show that Michelle and I have been asked to do that starts at midnight, and I'm like, yeah, no.
Yeah, we just pretty much said, I've
It,
done
it's
them. I've been up till
I
4 a.m. I've done like 4-hour radio interviews that start at midnight and 4 a.m. And you're just like all bright eyed and bushy tailed, just sucking back vultures, you
coffee.
know?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
awake, but I can't do the shows because it would be too loud. Everybody in my house would be awake.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it's not quiet enough. It's different when you're in a studio. But
Yeah. It
yeah,
makes it really, really tough. But this is good. I mean, I'm glad he's here. And there's some great interviews coming up. And the pre-records are fresh, phenomenal interviews. I just did a pre-record yesterday with Philip Mantle and Dr. Irina Scott. And I'll tell you something, when that thing airs next month, it's going to be bloody amazing. And so much
can't
so,
wait.
it's all in the Pascagoula alien abduction case. And I'll tell you, they have really researched it and wrote a whole other book about it. And they're in constant contact with like the last experiencer who was there. And all these witnesses have come through in the last 50 years. It's insane.
Yeah.
And, all I could do for most of the interview was just sit there. There was so much talking, but they're looking at doing a part 2 with us, which is going to be showing a lot of photographs. And one of the local libraries connected them with a gentleman or a family who had all of these records and letters that when the house sold, when the first witness died, it all came forward. So we're going to get to see a lot of stuff. And with that being said, our guest of honor is here.
Yay.
Dun, dun.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for
Good.
being awake for us and doing this
You're
live.
welcome, and
It's
thank
quite
you
an
for having me.
honor. No, it's our honor, honestly. And our audience is so excited too.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's going to be really great because, Michael and I just had a little bit of just jamming a little bit earlier and stuff, just doing sound checks and, very interesting fellow. And I'm anxious to hear, of course, your story because, everybody's chiming in. Well, thanks,
Hi.
guys. Look at
Karen's
that.
from the
I
UK.
know.
Hi,
The
Karen.
chat
Karen's
rooms
a,
are just
Karen's a
starting.
really good friend of mine in the UK.
I imagine when she told us
Also,
what time it was, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
we're so grateful
Where's-
that she's here as
well,
well.
she's also a champion staying up
Yes.
to hear Michael. I have to say kudos to anybody who stays up to listen to a show at 2 a.m. But it's I've done those and they're hard. So thank you for being here. It's so appreciated. So I'm going to pop up your book so people know what we're talking about tonight.
Wow.
Here we are.
Mm.
High Strangeness, a lifetime of alien and paranormal encounters. I don't know why it's doing anything all funky. There we go. That's better. And wow, just from some of the things that we've spoken about, I can't wait to delve into this. So how it's either an interest or an experience. And from the sounds of it, you have a lot. I mean, you have more experiences. I think you've just touched on some of your experiences. Where do you want to start with all of this? The stage is yours. It's your show. Wherever you want
Thanks,
to go, we'll
Wayne.
follow along.
Well, I made a few notes, but what I
Okay.
wanted to start off with is I was born in the East End of London during the 1970s. And I was an unexpected child. I was born premature at the London Hospital in Whitechapel Road.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
exactly, in the very same spot, and which is now the famous Royal London Hospital. And I was raised in a strict Roman Catholic Irish family,
Mm-hmm.
and in a strict Roman Catholic community. But the book that I wrote it focuses primarily on my childhood home. So I think you got a picture of that, Michelle.
Yes, I am. I'm going to put it up
So
right now as you speak.
it's just
Okay, here we go. Here it comes. Here we go.
Aww.
Oh, he's such a little cutie.
so that
Aw.
wasn't me, but the house in the background, this is from the 1970s. So
Right.
this is the house that I grew up in, and the book focuses mostly on this house.
Okay.
And you see, I was brought up in the childhood home belonged to the Roman Catholic Church, because it was a schoolhouse in the school grounds of a junior school, and it's also focuses in that environment of the school grounds and in the school. So
Okay.
a lot of the experiences I had as a child and teenager were focused, just on this location.
Right.
So, but the location itself is it's got a lot of history. It's in the exact area of where Jack the Ripper struck. So, and it's also if you were to go one way, say like depending on how fast you walk, you'd be in the City of London, and then if you go the other way, you'll be at the Tower of London.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that was literally 10 minutes away from me.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Would you like to meet his great great grandson?
I knew somebody once who worked for the king, who at the time when he was the prince. I had a friend who worked for him in the palace. But what I was saying is that with this particular house, it experienced when I was a child, my grandmother on my mum's side, she had just passed. She just died, and I was literally coming into the world. So I say in my book, we were passing each other.
Yeah. Wow.
She was on the way out, and I was in the way in. I was coming back in.
Right.
And then after she passed, the house itself started to experience poltergeist activity. So there was a lot of paranormal happenings in the house. So when I was a child, my dad used to tell me that when I was in the cot, there was a lot of lights that used to, what we call now orbs, used to be
Right.
floating, flying around the house. I mean, I've got 3 brothers. 2 of them are quite older than me, a lot older than me. Francis, Kevin, and I've got Sean, who's he's 2 years older than me. But and there's a lot of activity that happened with me and Sean. But in this particular house at the time, though, there was cold spots that would have come and go. My mum used to be in the house alone, and she would hear disembodied voices calling her name, both male and female, breathing on the back of her neck when she was doing jobs. And there was knocking on the walls, but this particular knocking, though, in the house where I was, they were like really solid walls. So if you were to bang them, normally there would be just like a thud on the wall, but these echoed like you were listening to stereo surround. And this used to go on, and this used to go on quite a lot in the night, So my dad was getting up to this sound and searching the house all the time, could never find anything. And then when he went back to bed, there was lots of banging again. And there was, Francis at one time when he was in the bed, he had a oak wardrobe toppled upon him on the bed, but he wasn't hurt. He was just, in shock. And also Kevin experienced, at one time walking up the stairs, he was pushed down the stairs by some unseen force. So the poltergeist activity started off mild, but then it started getting menacingly dangerous, to the point where somebody could be hurt. So because my parents lived in a strict, in a Roman Irish religious environment, they didn't say nothing about it. But my dad, he was a schoolkeeper, so he looked after the school, but he wasn't just an ordinary schoolkeeper. He was a Grand Knights Templar.
Yes.
He had connections with the higher members of the police force who were Freemasons. So I always remember them in the house as a child, coming and going. So he had lots of friends in the military. He'd been in the military himself. During the war,
Yes.
he'd been in the Royal Air Force. He actually was trained at Hereford, which is now the base for the SAS.
Oh, wow.
And my mum, she built Lancaster bombers during the war.
Wow, really?
We have one of those two that are left in the world right here in Canada.
Really?
Literally 20 minutes from my house. It's in the
Wow.
museum.
So
It's
she
beautiful.
worked in the munitions factories. So she built bombs for the
Wow.
craft, and she built the telecommunication systems for the cockpit.
Oh my gosh, that is
But-
fascinating.
But because
Wow.
she was quite intelligent. So I mean, it's not a big deal now. But during those times when she was, a woman, she was actually brought into the offices with the men because she was exceptionally intelligent. So, but so there's, and then my uncles as well, they were all in the military. I found out recently that one of my uncles actually served during the war with the SAS.
Wow.
So my older brother told me that recently.
Wow.
So so there's always a military, isn't there, theme to this?
Yes.
Careful.
Yes, there is.
Regardless.
I'll let you take this any direction you want.
regardless of this is a theme you see coming up more and more.
Yes.
With
you're not wrong.
people like us. So anyway, so he had friends as well at the Vatican. The late John Paul II. He had been friends with him. So as I say, he wasn't just a normal, everyday schoolkeeper, caretaker.
Yeah.
So at the time anyway, in order to deal with this poltergeist activity, he got a priest to bless the house. And so a priest come in, bless the house, and it went quiet for a while, as it does.
Right.
So I'm going to take it though. So after this, when I was growing myself, I started to have what my parents thought were invisible friends. So
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
and I remember, and this is in the book, and I remember having experiences with these two. They were adults, but my parents always thought they were children, and there was one time when I was in my bedroom and they appeared to me, or they were there, should I say, when I was in there. And I remember they used to come to me and they used to talk to me and tell me things. But in my book, I explained, though, it was so long ago, I can't remember what the conversations were about. But I do remember they used to come and play things like Follow the Leader with me, so I'd follow them somewhere. And then I remember one time my mum coming up the stairs. I could hear her on the stairs because it creaked.
Right.
And I was talking to them and in the bedroom, and my mum was outside the door listening, and I could hear her feet sort of moving, the weight of her feet moving. So the floorboards creaked, and I thought to myself I could hear her. So she obviously was listening to my conversation. So anyway, she eventually come in the door, and I was talking to my friends there on the other side, and I turned my head to see her, and she had a puzzled look on her face. And she asked me, "Who are you talking to?" And I said, "My friends." But when I turned my head back to them, they were gone. There was no longer there. And as I explain in the book, from the perspective of a child, the windows were closed, so I couldn't understand. Where did they go to? And you would have heard, obviously looking now as an adult, you're reasoning, you would have heard them opening the window, and, or something like that. Anyway, and she said to me, "I'm sure they'll come back." But she was, in the thinking they were invisible friends, make believe, imaginative friends. But it was that at that time I never told my parents that the two people that were coming to see me was a male and female. Now,
Do you feel they were spirit people, or?
well, I'll tell you what they were, because it wasn't until later that I discovered in classical ufology that they would be considered Nordics.
Ah,
So,
oh,
and
that's
they
interesting.
had the classical, the blonde hair. It was a male and a female, piercing blue eyes, high cheekbones, and their physiques were almost athletic, and they
Right.
were very tall. I mean, I was being a child, but they were tall anyway, taller than the adults around me.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to talk to me a lot. And I remember there was another time I was downstairs, what would have been the living room. My mum was in the kitchen. I was playing at the time with what would have been toy cars. And at some point I had a feeling in my head that I should go somewhere, that I should go leave the room, go upstairs. Someone was coming, and I had to be there for them. And at the time I went up the stairs and I went into the room, and there was nobody there. And then suddenly the person that I'd see normally, he just appeared in front of me, but the female wasn't there. But again, this tall, very impressive looking male, just looking down at me and me looking at him, and he was talking to me, but not with the mouth, just in the head. And he had like really piercing blue eyes, and I was looking up at him. It felt like, but as I explain in the book, though, it felt like he wasn't communicating with me, but another part of me, another, another aspect of me. It felt like, when I'm as an adult and thinking back of this interaction with this person, it felt like he was communicating something else to another part of me that obviously it exists within me. But the thing that always concerned me the most with these particular beings is I wasn't sure later on if they were friendly or if they were foe. Because the reason being is because I remember every time I come into contact with them, I entered altered states of consciousness. So the immediate environment would change, like the British author coined the phrase, the Oz factor.
Right.
And it seemed like the environment would suddenly disappear, and I would be just in this communication with this being. So everything around me would suddenly fade into the background. But at the time when I come out of this altered state, he wasn't there, and it was like like when you're sleepwalking and suddenly someone wakes you and you think, where the hell am I? Obviously as a child I wasn't thinking that, but I was actually running from this room in fear, in terror. And I remember running down the stairs, almost falling over myself to get to my mum to tell her that something had happened to me. But at the time with my parents, this is the thing as well that I always bring up, their attitude and their the way that they responded. It was quite ordinary. It was almost like they knew things, but they wasn't telling us. And I had this with Sean as well, my brother.
Right.
So yeah, I mean there are other areas obviously I'm not talking about here that happened that's in the book to do with these Nordic type beings, but again, back then in the 70s there was no literature, there was nothing that could influence what I see. Someone suggested to me, like, could it be a projection, like a screen memory or something, but it wasn't, because obviously the screen memories are taken from your mind to create the image. And there was nothing like that in my head. The only thing I had in my head was Jesus and the religion, the Roman Catholic.
Well, they say that even sometimes a poltergeist activity, that you can project energy. Psychokinesis is very popular. So I will ask you this: that are you the only one in the house that saw these beings, or did your brothers also have their shares of experiences?
Well, what I'll talk about next is with me and Sean, but I
Right.
can't honestly say if they did, because there was I consider during the 70s there was a lot of families back then
Yes.
who they were very secretive.
Yes.
There was
We
a lot
didn't
of
talk
stuff.
about things like that.
No, but there was a lot of stuff that happened in my house that they just didn't talk to us about it. I mean, when we were children, me and Sean were okay, but as we grew up and that I've not seen Sean now for almost a decade. I had an opportunity to speak to him at one time, which was good because it was to confirm aspects of what happened with me and him, to see what he thought about them now, and he remembers them. So and I wanted to see if he did. And I asked, I was asking his permission, could I put his name in the book?
Right.
He said, and he said, yeah, of course, but with my other two brothers, I don't have communications with these either. So it is, and as I go along and explain, I wonder if my experiences that I had frightened Sean, and maybe he believed that in some way I was the one that was causing them, because I do know that he had frightening things happen to him when I was around. So I think that I may be wrong. I'm just trying to reason, trying to understand if in any way the phenomena that I've encountered throughout my life is partly responsible for my relationship with him breaking down.
Well, I think you have to, and I mean, Amelia can chime in on this as well. I think you have to maybe factor in that being powerful, we are powerful people, beings. We're powerful as human beings. And I think it's easier sometimes for people to think that there's something very supernatural going on, as opposed to them thinking, I'm a very powerful being that could be projecting this amazing, incredible energy, even though it's terrifying. I mean, it happens all the time, especially with young people, especially going through the years of puberty. I mean, Amelia, what are your thoughts on that?
I was just playing with my microphone.
Too low. Too low.
How's that?
Yeah.
Better?
No, a little higher.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes from here to here.
Yeah, it's
Mercury is in retrograde.
This is how's that? This
That's
is
good.
perfect example,
Yes.
Michael.
Yeah.
And you have my favorite name because my brother Michael passed away, and I was very, very close to him. Too loud?
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay, how's
Yeah.
that?
That's steady. Okay.
Okay. All right. I do this, and this is perfect timing.
Right.
This is what happens with my energy. I break things. Okay. I can't keep appliances. I can't keep cell phones. Things like fly out of my hands. I walk by a toaster oven and it's gone. 3 months. $400 toaster oven. Gone. Why? Because I used it. Microwaves. It's equipment for technology for this show. Microphones. I'm like, see? Yeah.
That's
Just
interesting.
crazy. Yeah.
That's interesting because it does happen to a lot of people like us, because I remember being in the job and I worked in covert surveillance at one time, and the radios that we used and my colleagues used, every time I wore them, the batteries would, even though they were fully charged, the batteries would go dead. And eventually, I was taking them from my colleagues and they were going dead, and no one would give me one, the battery, because they were like saying, what's wrong with you? You're draining all this equipment.
Yeah. So you see, you're very powerful. I can't hear you at all now, Amelia. See?
Okay, how about
You might have to use sign language.
Oh, there we go.
That's it.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I wonder if, going through everything you were going through, if maybe some of it may have been your own energy putting it out there. I mean, especially knowing what you know about yourself now, which of course, you'll talk about what you want to talk about as you go along, but knowing now all of the incredible things that you've experienced and that you can do, I wonder if it was just starting at a really young age from you, and you maybe weren't recognizing these incredible abilities.
I mean, when I was a child as well, one of the strange things that had happened as well, my parents had me go and see somebody, because at the time, I don't do it now, but at the time I was able to do telekinesis. So I was brought somewhere, and I remember them in the white coats, and they were giving me tests, and I was able to move objects in front of them. So this is something as well that I could do. But
See, so
back
projecting
then,
energy would be nothing for you.
No,
but
see.
but back then you don't think of it as being anything. You just
Right.
think it's it's not something, you don't really question it. So
Right.
when I was growing up, you didn't question things. If my dad spoke, it was the law, basically. I mean, when I grew up, I was frightened of him because he was really strict. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I talk about my interactions with my parents, mostly my dad, who I was afraid of. There's like, in the book, it's not just about this type of this type of phenomena. So the book explains my relationships and trying to understand the phenomena and why it was happening to me as I grew up. I was learning more and more and trying to understand it. But it's also things that have happened to me. So there are certain things in the book that could be considered like triggering, which they're not, because the reason being is because I want to show the impact that this phenomena can have on a child. Even now, as I said to you, Michelle, I was diagnosed last year with complex PTSD, which is to do with multiple abuses,
Yes.
and trauma that's not being resolved. So it's just one on top of the other on top of the other, which plays itself out. Mostly it's because of what I've had happen to me,
Yes.
and the other part of it is to do with happening to me on the human level.
Right.
So as a
Right.
child, so the trauma that I experience now is to do with fragmented memories, but it's also to do with the inner child, which I say to people, my inner child is still at that house. He's hiding somewhere in that house.
That's a good way to look at it. So maybe it's just trying to resolve everything that happened
Have you
in
ever tried?
stages, right? I can't hear you,
Sure.
Bubbles. I know. It's Mercury or it's you, man. It's one of the two.
It's me.
There we go.
I think it's me. Can you hear me?
Yes. A little bit.
Okay.
You sound like a
I
little
think
wee-
it's me.
itty bitty bird.
Okay, how's that?
We'll
I'm
take
gonna
it.
leave my soundboard open because I'm
Okay,
on
see,
it way too much. Have you
that's what
ever? Okay. Oh, it went by itself. It's doing that again.
Okay. So far, so good.
Love of God. Okay. So, have you ever tried to connect with that inner child, Michael, to heal? Okay. I understand. I don't know what you went through, but I know what it's like to suffer trauma as a child and have it come at you in hypnosis instead of recalling it by memory. This
is where progressively the books will be in volumes. So the books I'm writing are in volumes.
Okay.
That's for you.
Thank you for that. I'll take it.
Yeah.
But
Chris is a good guy.
Okay. Go ahead.
but
Sorry.
the books will be in volumes, so they follow, and I'll explain why. But they follow. But like you were saying, Amelia, I did the this is what I'm doing now. So the books have been, writing this book has been difficult, but it's also very therapeutic. It's very healing, isn't it? Because you're getting it all out. You're putting it down. I mean, writing the drafts was difficult because you're reliving it all again. So there was, there were, in places there were a lot of tears. There was, there was a lot of all these emotions coming up. So, but in one way, it felt at the time, very traumatic. But at the same time, you're healing, aren't you? You're peeling back those layers, and you're literally going into them straight in and dealing with each one of them. I mean, they're still there, but the impact of them and what you've carried all your life, because you just don't talk about this stuff really. I find it, with complex PTSD, you have difficulties trusting people because when you have trusted people, you know what it's like in our communities. We've all had it, whether it's the the UFO stuff or the paranormal. It's the same for all of us.
It
We've all
is.
experienced ridicule, and you know we've seen it all really.
No,
So
oh,
and it's,
absolutely.
you know, and
Absolutely.
everyone I'm sure in this chat room as you know that are listening in and watching that they've had this, you know,
Oh,
and
I guarantee you in one form or another. And I think it was a sign of the times that
yeah,
all of this
Yeah,
occurred in. You just
Gen
didn't
X.
talk about things like that, especially
no,
coming from a family with a strong religious faith.
yeah,
I know
you
all
didn't,
about that.
Yeah.
do you? Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I grew up Roman Catholic with a devout, my mother was very devout. My great uncle was in the church, family members. No, I know exactly what it's like. I didn't grow up talking about anything about
I mean,
myself.
what's interesting though, don't you think, is that sometimes you feel that there's you know us as souls and the type of souls that we are, we're almost born secretly into these, you know, to expose them in a way into
Mhm,
these type of families, you know, and
mhm.
sometimes you know you have generational abuse in these families that go on
It's
until it
true.
breaks, don't you? You
Yep.
know, they normally say there's normally one generation, there's a generation that breaks it all.
I believe I did. I believe I broke those chains. And I tell my brothers that all the time. I said, I will never raise my child the way I was raised. Not that I wasn't loved,
Mm,
I
Mm.
was loved, but she didn't know any different.
no,
I was very loved by her, but like I said, she was gifted and yet wouldn't let me talk about it. I kind of find that abusive in so many ways because of
Mhm,
what you deal with. Some children can't deal with going through that.
mhm.
no,
And, especially me being in high school in the 80s, that there wasn't any paranormal television. I don't know when you were
no.
in high school, but I think Gen X, I know because I'm playing with it. I think the Gen X generation X as well. I'm
Mhm.
trying
I know, sorry.
like with
And
mouth.
I have earbuds in, and it's almost like I'm trying to get away when it gets out. I can't.
You move, I look and I see it. I have open and I have my finger on this damn button right now.
It
But
happens.
I
Yeah.
think Generation
Tech
X has
issues.
a lot.
Tech issues have been. We were great at sound check today, Michael, and the amount of tech issues I've had trying to load this show before we started was unbelievable. So
But do
definitely
you
agree.
But do you find when your shows that you have, do you find that you have a lot of these problems? Because you know, throughout the, you know, with the paranormal shows, there's always these problems that come up when people are talking. Do you
We've
ever get,
actually
you
been
know?
really lucky
Yeah.
with that. We've had some that have been just brutal, and yet we've had some. Most of them are,
Mm,
like just smooth sailing. But
Yeah.
um, so you basically were having all of these experiences, and with PTSD, writing the book, I would agree, would be very therapeutic. You're facing it head on. It's forcing you in a way at your own pace, however, to reflect on it and deal with it. And it opens up other doors as
mm.
well. Did you find that you were just recalling more just by thinking about it and putting it pen to paper, so to speak? When you're visualizing it and you actually see it in writing, um, do you find that things started coming back, memories and experiences? I mean,
I've
more.
always had, I mean, I've always had what, you know, what you call a marker memory. So it's like the memory is burned into your, you know, that you don't never forget it. Obviously,
Right.
I've got fragmented memories. You know, I might be able to remember something, what I would say in the middle, but I can't remember how it began or how it ended, but
Yeah, I
parts of it,
neither.
you know. So, and, but I've always had a strong memory of a lot of the things that I've encountered, which helped me obviously to write the book in
Mhm.
that respect. Um,
Right.
but, and again, you know, like yourselves, you know, I'm very visual. So I'm able to, I mean, if somebody was to read something to me, I don't respond to that as much as if I'm looking at it. I'm able to memorize things when I see them,
Mhm.
especially, you know, especially images. I'm able to and use that, you know, like you say, like with remote viewing or the out of body experiences. It's quite easy for me to do things like that. But yeah, it's but it did bring up other memories, like you said. This is when we come into more the the milab.
Right.
So
Right.
then I suppose it breaks off from the other part, and it pushes you forward into this. It opens up or other doors. So your subconscious mind is trying to push out of this information, which is just below the surface
So
of your
it's
mind.
been suppressed in you in one way or another,
Yeah.
whether it's your own mind protecting you or
Mm.
whether you're just being
I think
swept.
I think it's two things here going on. We both know, you can disassociate because of fear. Your subconscious might come in to try to help to protect you. Often the case it doesn't, because I feel that's obviously where a lot of your phobias come from. Whilst it's
Yeah.
protecting you, it's giving you these, fears
Mhm.
of other things. So it's playing out just below
Right.
the surface. But then I do also know that some of the experiences that I've had, that other people will have and do have, are their memories have been wiped deliberately to hide what I call insidious behavior, covert behavior, from non-humans and human beings,
Right.
military personnel.
Right.
Um,
So
so
when do you feel, try to put it as delicately as possible, because I know there's a lot of people that are going through this, have gone through this. When the Nordics stopped coming, so I'll
mm,
back up just a minute just to try to introduce or set the stage, so to speak. Um, when was the last time you saw them? And then what was your next experience um, with extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings?
after I guess it was about I was probably about 4 years, 3 years, 4 years old. But you
Wow.
see, the
Okay.
thing what I remember about that is that I wonder. This is why I'm saying, were they friends? Were they friendly or were they not? Because I'm still on the gate with that one. I'm sitting on the
Okay.
fence with that one. I'm not sure, so I don't want to say. I'm not.
Right.
I just don't know at the moment. But
Right.
what I think is, I think it's either two things. I think it's either the Nordics came to me to prepare my way for my other encounters,
Mhm.
which
Okay.
then would be with the what we now, I didn't know what they were then, obviously, but I now know that they are what we now know as the Greys,
Okay.
um,
Okay.
and which are mostly involved with the abduction phenomena.
Mhm.
Um, but the but I do say in my book, is this the case, or were they pushed out of the way by the Greys? You know, were
Well,
they
yeah.
were they okay? Were they good? Were they benevolent? Were they coming
Mhm.
to, help me in a good way? But then these
Mhm.
other beings come along, the Greys, and said, well, you know what?
Mhm.
Push you out that way, you go that way. And now it's our
Right.
turn, so
Right.
then so I don't know, I'm not sure, only because of the fear that I felt. But I obviously can acknowledge also the fear could have been my own, as a child being afraid of something I don't understand.
Mhm. Well,
It could
that's
also
pretty
it,
major thing for
but
a child to try to deal with.
but it could also be, the terror could have been when I was in an altered state, and then I'm suddenly, thrown out of that state, and then you're sort of disorientated. So there's obviously a fear there and running from it. But I do remember a lot of the time I had this terror with with these type of beings, with these Nordic type beings, and also there was other times I saw other Nordics as well. That it was normally
Mhm.
the male and the female, but there were other times I saw a different type of Nordic, and often they used to appear and then disappear. They were quite around me quite a lot as a child.
Mhm.
But again, I didn't know then. I didn't say, in my mind, oh, that's a Nordic. I
Right.
just
You
it's
just
just
say that they
it's
were,
just
yeah,
it's
friends who were
yeah, they were just
right.
there. But at the
Right.
time, I thought everyone had this. as a
Right.
child. It was only later on that your mind starts to mature,
Mm.
and you're starting to reason, what is this
Mm.
normal?
Right.
Does everyone else have this? So it's just me.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Um,
Before we continue, Bubbles, can you get this one? Um,
Dolly asks, when was your last encounter? How long has it been?
yeah.
well, the abduction continues to this day. With the abduction program, you tend to go from a infancy, I would say, to a child, teenager, young adult, mature adult, and even up until the time you pass from the earth. It all depends. But the last one I had, I would say, was probably about 3 weeks ago. But a lot of my abductions come from out of body experiences, as I will explain. A lot of abductees do have out of body experiences,
Right.
where, and as I was saying to somebody the other day, sometimes they're waiting for you to leave your body to take you. And
Wow.
it was on there's a show in the United Kingdom called the UFO Chronicles.
I'm
And I
familiar
remember,
with it. Yeah.
yeah, and I remember they were advertising the book on there, and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. So it's a guy who's basically had out of body experiences, and now he teaches about it and he talks about it. But when I was looking at his bio, he had the exact same things as I've had. So he's had the out of body experiences, and he explains they wait for you as you come out of your body and they take you. So the Greys do this with me a lot, when I'm coming out of my body in your immediate environment. So it's not an astral projection, it's an out of body experience where you're coming up above your body, but then you can then decide, what you want to do. So if you're a projector, I'm a normal projector. I mean, I can do it at will, and
Right.
other times, sometimes I explain another part of you, another aspect or oversoul takes over. So when you want to go one way, it's actually taking you the other way for a different reason, and you got no control over that.
Right.
But as I talk, when I write in my book, I explain that about the out of body experiences.
Right.
And again, I've had this, with the military side of it, where
So,
they're waiting for you.
so when you started having experiences with grays, like again, I'll back up a minute just because I know we got ahead with the question. So, how old were you when that started, and when do you feel is that when you think the abduction process had begun?
For the Greys.
Yeah, well, so you mean you've been abducted by more than more than one species? Good Lord, man! Oh my God, I want to hug you too. Yeah. So I
Uh,
guess the Greys were the next one that you feel the Nordic stepped aside for or got bumped for. So let's
mm,
go with them next. When
the,
did it start with them for you?
probably 4 years old.
Also 4. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It was young age when I started to have.
Wow. Okay. And that continue on, like, were there other races coming in at that point, or was it primarily Greys? Because there's so many out there. I mean, and especially when you're not allowed to remember, it's like, how the heck do you know?
Yeah, that I've had as I've gone through, I've had other encounters with others.
Mm,
I've had the encounters with demonic energies.
mm. Yeah.
So that's in my book where I've had a lot of that.
Mhm.
But as I've gone on through my life, I have an understanding that I have some sort of connection with this type of being that
Mm.
stretches back, like we were saying, Michelle, earlier on, through our lives. There is a bond there with these
Yes.
type of beings.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that the church has basically, mixed this up a little bit, intentionally.
I think a lot of it. Yeah, it's just you're working with
So
your
it's,
shadow
so it's,
self. Yeah.
so it's like causing confusion in the subject. You know, I mean, I've had bad experiences with them, but and I do have experiences with this type of entity now.
Right.
You know, with demonic energies. But I've also, as explained to you, at a very young age, I was a soul rescuer.
Right.
So, you know, and as I explained in the book, you know, being a child, I was, you know, sometimes I couldn't articulate what was happening to me, but on another level, I was much wiser than a lot of adults around me because I knew things that they didn't know. I had access to other areas that they didn't even know exist.
Right.
Hi, from Manchester. Thanks for coming to see me.
There we go. Another champ up at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning.
Okay.
Wow.
Oh, see, it's moving by itself or something. Seriously.
Right. So go ahead, Amelia, because you're low.
Thank you. I was just going to say, and it moves itself up. I was just going to say, battling with demonic entities must have been very difficult being Catholic. Did you ever seek assistance from the church?
No, because they would lock me up.
Right?
Yeah,
That's
they
what
would.
I always say. I said it's crazy because I have gone to them, and I'll tell you that story another time because this show is about you and I don't want to take up all of your time, but they don't always help. They're not there. It's not like the stories. It's not like the books and the movies. They're not always willing to come help you.
No, I mean I knew a lot of priests when I was growing up. You know, I went to, you know, both of the schools I went to were Roman Catholics, and you know they were, you know, the first one was run by the nuns.
Mm.
You know, not very nice nuns, but
They were, let's say, firm.
yeah, and
Good word.
yeah, we all know the stories about the
Yes,
nuns.
we'll go with firm.
Yeah,
They were really good. I was very lucky.
were they? Oh,
Yeah.
well, that was quite good. If you got,
They were from Italy too, so it was. I'm not going to talk.
Firm.
so
Go ahead, Michael.
it's always. The thing is, though, is Amelia, it's always good if you got the positive experiences. You know, I mean, people have the choice, don't they, to be or not to be in a certain way. You know, but you know, so you know, but you got the good ones, so you know that's good
The
as well.
nuns, not the priests. That's a whole other story.
Yeah, the priests, but there is a part in the book that I explain what happened when I decided to tell my GP, my doctor, you know, the family doctor. Yeah, that didn't go well.
Right.
But I didn't mention the alien abduction as I explained in the book. What would have happened then if I would? This was about the paranormal.
Right.
And I mentioned something to, you know, he was he was a Roman Catholic. Because my dad was Irish, and he was born in Dublin, in Ireland. So in the area,
Yes.
in the area where I grew up, in the area where he grew up, it was almost like in Ireland. It would have been the Bronx in New York.
Right.
So you had to be very tough to you know, get on there. But and the doctor that I had, he come from this area as well, and he was like, he didn't have as they say, a bedside manner. He was very rude to the patients. A good doctor, but he didn't know how to talk to people.
Right.
So,
Yes. 1 second. Please do. Just write it down and we'll put it up. Thank you.
I was fortunate with my doctor as well. He's very much into it.
That's helpful when they have an understanding. Mine was as well. I was very, very fortunate that way.
Well, I'm he has to know.
I don't know what that means. So
I'm highly medicated for anxiety, depression, and stuff like that. So it's part of the gifts. I think with the empathy is too strong, it's really hard to release it, and it takes years to learn that. You know, I'm the opposite. A lot of my friends are very trusting.
Right.
I'm the person that doesn't trust anybody. But when I do, I get burned. So I understand that.
Right.
You're very sensitive then, aren't you? To
Mm.
and often when you're like that as well, you tend to take on, you tend to take from the other person, you take all their bad stuff, and you're trying to transform it, change it for your own system, and often that can, bring you down. You can feel bad because you're trying to process their thought patterns, their emotions, and it can
Right.
drain you, can't it? It's very draining.
It's extremely
Right.
draining.
Yeah.
A lot of people say to me, "Why don't you do readings?" First of all, I think that I'm not here to do readings. Like, not all of us are here. Some of us are here to work with the light. So that's another reason why. But I do use my gifts to help when there's missing children. That's where I put that type. And if someone has had a loss of a child, I will do a reading to connect them because I want them to have
I know.
I want them to have that peace. But anyways, right?
I know.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy?
Oh my goodness.
It's just
Oh.
crazy, right? It just goes.
Michael, have you considered hypnosis? It's one
I
of
did.
those. It's a tricky thing, right? Because you can't go back once you do.
During the 1990s, as I'll explain in my next book, but during the 1990s, I did seek out, as I was again trying to understand. I knew that things were happening to me, to have regressive, hypnosis. But at the time, I was actually laughed at and told to get out of the offices. That I went to a few,
Right.
and I did at one time. I went to Bufora, which is equivalent to is it Bufora here in the United States? I mean, and I was given this guy. His name was Lucian Morgan. I remember. It always stuck with me, his name.
Right.
And they sent me to him to see him, and he was a hypnotherapist, and I'm pretty sure if you Google him, I think you can find him still, because I think
Right.
he appeared on TV once doing this type of stuff, and I'm not sure why Bufora had him working with them, but I went there and I remember going up to this flat of his and doing a ESP test. And I remember he thought I cheated because he had I can't remember now, quite a few envelopes sealed, and he had images in them, and he placed them on the floor. I remember, and he was saying to me, "Now tell me what's in this one, and tell me what's in that one," and I got them all right,
Wow.
even though they're in there. And he said, "How did you do that?" And I remember he was quite annoyed with me and thinking, "You must have cheated." And I was thinking, "Well, how can I cheat? I was in front of you. You just didn't leave the room. You were sat there, and I was sat here." But I don't know why. Again, I don't know why I went to him, and I don't know why he done that test, because I didn't go there for that. I went there to try to explain to him, I'm having all these experiences. Do you know what they are? Can you help me?
I know someone who can help you.
I gotta go
Yeah.
out. Yeah. It's like a whole other adventure tonight.
I'm so sorry. I'm trying not to talk.
Go ahead.
Okay. I know who can help you. Steve Burgess.
He's in
Really?
England.
Okay.
Steve Burgess.
Go
Yeah.
online and connect with him.
Just Google him. Yeah, he's out your neck of the woods.
I'll do that. Yeah, thank you for that. I'll look him up.
Yeah, he's good.
He came to me, and I knew that was a connection.
Yeah, see, there we go.
Yeah.
I'll look him up. Yeah, thanks for that, Amelia.
He's a great man. You're gonna love him. He's really good at what he does.
Hmm.
And I have friends who have gone to him from here.
That's the thing, though. As I explained it to people in the UK, there's not hardly anything in the UK that, apart from on the Facebook, I guess, communities, that actually help, that can deal with, that help abductees. There's nothing here really. I mean, I was going to set up my own support group, which would be in Glastonbury in the southwest of England. That's something I'm looking at the moment. Should I tell you another experience?
Stage is yours. Yes, please.
because of the photographs as well.
Yes.
So this one is under the daylight disc. I think I got.
Yeah, you just
Yeah.
have to 1, 2, 3. Which email was it? I've got the overhead. I've got bringing you out picture 1, bringing you out picture.
It should have a yellow circle on it.
Yellow circle. Hold
Yeah,
on.
yeah. On the.
Hold on. Oh, okay, I've got one here. It's just trying to do something. Yellow circle. Okay, well, I see one that's got kind of a yellow with an arrow. Same?
That's not it. No, that's the other
No.
one.
Oh, I got it. That's number
Yeah.
2. See, there we go. I've got everything labeled. Thought I was ahead of the game. So, all right, hold on. Here we go, and here we
Exhibit
are.
A.
All right, here we
So
are.
yeah, this particular location is the school. The school that I went to. This is obviously an aerial view of it, but this isn't from the 1970s. This is more modern now, but it's the same basically. It's the same location. It's just different a little bit with the imagery. But with this particular one, I remember with me and Sean, we were again, around the age of 4 and Sean 6.
Right.
We were outside of the schoolhouse that I showed you, my childhood home, and on the green just opposite, just adjacent to it, there was we went out to have a kick around with the ball, to play football or soccer, and we were kicking the ball around for about 30 or so minutes when Sean suggested to me, why don't we go for a walk around the school, because it was the summer holidays, so we had the school to ourselves, really, the grounds, if we wanted.
Right.
And this was on a weekday. So in London, this was in London. So in a weekday, it was very busy. There's a lot of in the immediate area, just outside the school fences on the roads. There was like warehouses, and there was, just opposite my house, there was a really busy police station called Lehman Street, which is still there to this day, which is used by the armored police. I remember, so we went for a walk and we went past, which was in the photograph, which would have been the toilet block, just where the green bush is. And where the yellow circle is, we went up to this part of the school, and just in front of that circle in the far background is the school hall. But Sean went up onto where you see the steps to the first type of platform. There's 2,
Right.
So one leads up to one and one leads up to the other, which is closer to the school hall, the bigger building with the windows. I remember Sean being there, and I was actually kneeling down below the stairs, looking at red fire ants, of all things. I remember I had my back to him, and I remember him saying, that there was something in the sky just above one of the buildings on the if you look on the left hand side of that circle, and I remember getting up and turning around, and he was pointing in the sky, and I remember looking in the direction of his finger. So when I looked up in the sky, it was obviously a blue sky, and there's a lot of white clouds, but it was clear, very sunny day. And I could see what would now be like a classical, I guess, silver colored disc, or like a flying saucer. And so we were both staring at it, and at the time, again, we had this shift. There was a shift in the environment, and we both went into an altered state of consciousness. And I remember that this craft though was coming closer and closer to us, and I'll explain my confusion in a bit. When you're thinking about it's because. But when I suddenly come out of the altered state, I had this feeling of fear, this feeling, I need to get out, I need to go, I need to run from this area, I need to get away. But when I looked over at Sean, he was still frozen. in this state.
Wow.
He was just basically staring. And when they come out of it, obviously this craft, whatever it was gone. And it felt like we've lost time.
Oh no.
And then
Wow.
and then Sean is still staring, literally like a zombie. He was just like, and it's only when he snaps out of it, when I called him, I was like saying, Sean, over and over. And then suddenly he sort of shook. And again, he was like me, in a state of confusion, I don't know how he's feeling, of course, but I could see from his face. And it was me, I started to take off then back in the direction that we came. And I was running, and he wasn't far behind me. And we were looking, I remember looking up, we were looking at the sky to see if we could see this, where it was, where this craft was, if it was following us, and we couldn't see anything. But then I remember running up the stairs to our childhood, the house. Because I remember my dad was at home. He was having a bite to eat with my mum in the kitchen. And so we basically pushed open the door, and we got our dad, he scolded us for scaring our mum, because we pushed the door open really quickly. They didn't expect that. And then he basically said to us, what's the hurry? What's wrong? And I remember us saying to him, what had happened. We seen this craft in the sky, back then it was unknown. We'd never seen anything like that before.
No, so that was the first time you've ever seen a craft.
Yeah.
Wow,
and it was like,
crazy.
and it would have been, again, that it was shining because the sun, I believe, was reflecting off its metal.
Right.
But it was coming closer and closer. But the thing is, though, it was in broad daylight. It was in a busy area of London.
Right.
And there were several people around. This was a really busy area of London. And you have to think, why did they see it? Why were we the only ones who see this?
Right.
And so that was, I think, the first time that we saw anything like that. And it was spoken about later on, as teenagers, and it was spoken about in the family. Do you remember that time when and so, but with the parents, though, my mum and dad, and so they said to us, okay, it's fine. They just said that. So it wasn't like, oh, where was this and what is, it wasn't like I think you would expect people to respond to that. And it wasn't. It was almost normal, like in some ways, looking back, like they knew certain things.
Right.
I mean, as a child, differently with regards to my brothers were always treated differently from me.
Right.
I was the youngest, but I was never allowed to do anything. I always had to stay close to the home. I was never allowed to have friends around, but my brothers were allowed to have and allowed to go. But my parents kept me close to them, close to the house.
So
Nice.
you feel that they knew something and just didn't say anything, or just didn't care, like they didn't behave like they knew anything?
Well, later on, I come to the understanding that my mum was an abductee.
Okay, I was going to just say,
Yeah.
was this generational? Okay.
So-
Explains everything.
And my
Yeah.
dad, my dad was the type of person who didn't, he didn't look at this type of fun. As far as I know,
Right.
he was very like, no nonsense, nuts and bolts type of guy.
Yes.
But I do know, because he told me, I do know that he had paranormal experiences.
Right.
You know,
Right. It's
yeah.
funny how they don't want to talk about things like that. My father never wanted to talk about things like that, but later in life, he started telling me about all these experiences. I'm sitting there going, you made me feel like I completely was losing my mind. Whereas my mother would be like, you have an imaginary friend. Want me to set a place at the table? She's very encouraging. And my father was the opposite until later in life.
But you know what, though? This is, sorry, Amelia, you go ahead.
No, you're our guest. No, please.
But the thing is, what you're saying, like Michelle, that makes sense, because you remember I was saying to you when we had the poltergeist activity in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Now we had all these things going on. We had this, my dad had this banging going on. That was really loud. It wasn't normal banging,
Right.
And he used to get up. But then he used to go down searching the house, looking for an intruder. But this is the thing with reason. So your mind, your left brain is telling you it's actually an intruder, a human intruder. but you got all this crazy stuff going on when the right brain saying to you, actually, it's not that. So you've got this
Right.
little argument going on with your brain. But
Right.
when it's something, it's something that's not normal, or in that, in that, well, what we know is normal, but
Yes.
you're still going down, you're still acting up like, there's an intruder downstairs, a burglar's got in,
Right.
someone's broke
Right.
in. When in actual fact, well, you've got all the cold spots, you've got somebody talking to your mum or your wife, but
Yeah. Yeah.
there's nobody there. So
No.
do you really
No.
think it's going to be a human intruder? But you convince yourself, don't you? Even though you know, it's almost like when you lose keys, you're looking in the places. You might be looking in the refrigerator with your keys. And
Yes.
when you know that it's not
Right.
there. But
Well, it is when you're pregnant.
Right.
Well, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, they've been there a few times.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I just tried to lighten the mood.
I like it.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah, well, okay. So we basically I get the protective thing because your mother. I'm gonna ask a question, or Wayne had a question. Where I'm gonna go up for being a contactee. I had to go to my mother too and say, okay, I think I have memories when I was young. I know I have memories right now. Like I know stuff's going on. Did anything go on in the family? My father has Alzheimer's now, so I couldn't really ask him. But she reiterated, no, both sides of the family have had experiences and so on. So it added a little bit to that credibility. I didn't feel so isolated in it, because you kind of go from like, oh wow, to hey, please tell me I'm not the only one family having these thinking experiences. And I got Amelia just like, no, it doesn't happen to me. Yes, it does. But so I mean, everyone's just like kind of throwing me under the bus. That was just you, Michelle. Like,
Just you.
no, it's not.
No.
But anyway, we have a question. Amelia, if you can get this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just worried about the microphone.
You want me to get it? If it gets too
No,
loud,
no, it's okay. Just let me know.
Okay.
Michael, do you think that the blood type has any influence on whether or not a person is either visited or taken by ET or other? Do you think there is a preference?
That's a good question. I mean, thank you for that. I do, and I was going to say to you, I saw you on the show the other day, and when I was looking back at the shows, I loved the way that you were talking about your books, and like yourself, my book's very detailed. I like details, and I think that brings a larger experience to the person reading the book. It brings it to life, doesn't it? Then they're experiencing as well.
No, it's true. You feel like you're right there. The reader feels like they're right
That's
there.
what an avid reader wants.
So,
that's the experience.
So we'll be getting your books. But to answer your question, though, I do. But yes, I think that's true what you said. I believe blood type is everything. I think that we know that these, if we were going into the the MELABs now, they're very interested in blood types, ancestral blood types. This is a large. I think this is something that needs to be looked at a lot more in regards to what it is they're actually interested in. So and I'm pretty sure most of the people, the larger proportion of our communities, in high strangeness, have these type of bloodlines that they're interested in.
Like which bloodlines?
Exactly. Yeah.
No,
Amelia.
which ones?
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant which ones. Oh, sorry. I thought you meant witches, but I mean like that. What we're talking about, Michelle.
I'm Italian. I've got tons of witches.
Yeah. The RH negative
nothing
ones.
wrong with that. But like I think as well with if your bloodlines run in this particular, as we were saying, like if you've got strong bloodlines in particular families in the occult,
Right.
or Celtic bloodlines or Scandinavian Jewish even bloodlines, that are that go back to biblical times, that run in a theme. You follow a theme from lifetime to lifetime. So you may have been in the ancient mystery schools where you've learned a lot of things. So in the shamanic, they seem to be interested in this. I think the area which is controlling the psychic and the
Mhm.
spiritual, and trying. I think it's to do with controlling that aspect of us,
Mhm.
and there seems to be a common theme with that, especially with the MILAB projects and how
Mm.
abductees and military abductees are used.
Right.
A lot of the time, if you were looking at back engineered craft, a lot of these craft are used. They use the mind to control these type of technologies.
Do you think also that extraterrestrials are interested in these same abilities?
I would say so. Yes. I
Mhm.
mean, I think
Being
there's
a more advanced species,
the thing is though, like with the malevolent type of beings, people think that if you're advanced, you could be like centuries advanced. Centuries advanced doesn't mean you're spiritually advanced, does it?
Mhm.
It doesn't. So
Right.
being you could be around like for thousands of years, but you may not, again, in our case, you may not have dealt with your shadow selves, you know so
Mhm.
because you're advanced doesn't mean you're spiritually advanced. But of course we do know there are
Mhm.
benevolent races and they're interested in us, but they're more interested in helping us to awaken those abilities, to
Yes,
balance the greater part of ourselves.
I agree.
And then you've got the opposite side of the coin with the darker energies, whether they're human
Mhm.
or non-human, but they're
Mhm.
obviously interested in controlling it for
Mhm.
their own purposes, and obviously stopping us from remembering the greater part of ourselves, because
We're the
we are
species with amnesia.
because we are divine beings. We are spiritual beings, we are mortal,
Yeah.
and we got amazing abilities within us, and they create this chaos, they create this fear to
Mhm.
enable us to, in a way, to turn on each other. Whilst
Yeah.
they're sitting on the fence,
Division.
eating the
Yeah.
popcorn, watching us destroy ourselves.
Right.
Which, so that's it's psychological warfare.
I agree with you. I think division, the divide and conquer game
Yeah.
is a big one, and I've really seen a lot of that over the case of the last 3 years. I mean, people are just so angry, and
Mm,
everybody seems to be, well, I won't say everybody, that's just stretching it, but so many people, see like they're at odds with everything, with themselves, with
Especially in
everybody
driving.
else. Like I try not to go on social media a whole lot. I don't really have a lot of
mm.
time to do that, but boy, I see just so much anger and loss, and it's a very heavy feeling being there,
I
you
see
know?
the anger in drivers.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah, when they're
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
driving.
That's true.
we're gonna quickly do a station and sponsor ID, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about MeLab.
Yeah, fingers crossed I don't blow your ears out. So
Like
it's
now?
it's already there. Yeah. I I can't lower it.
Okay.
I
I still
can't
got my
lower it.
earbuds, but go ahead.
I'm trying. I've changed.
Okay.
How's that?
It's low, but it's better than having my eardrums blasted
Okay.
out.
I'm just seeing it raises by itself. That's really loud, right?
Yeah, no, that's good.
That's
That's right.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, I changed the gain.
Okay, don't touch a thing.
I'm
Beauty.
not touching anything. I didn't touch anything last week to this week and it's changed. Okay. I think the fairies are playing with my microphone, just saying. Alrighty then. So you are listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano, coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans on 105.3 and 107.7 FM radio, as well as we are now on Roku channel. So if you're watching us for the first time, welcome and thank you. Please share us with your friends. You'll hear me say that a lot throughout this. Hopefully, I'm not blowing up ears. Our guest tonight is the amazing Michael Kameron, all the way from the UK, and he is discussing his book, High Strangeness, A Lifetime of Alien and Paranormal Encounters. We are just so honored to have him here. It's so late for him over in the UK. Having him live is just such a great honor. Thank you for being here. If you are just tuning in, no worries. You can stream our archives on any platform. If you have Roku, you can watch us in archives. And you can also watch us on YouTube if you're, which most people do go on YouTube, right? Just remember to click like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And again, don't forget to share us with your friends and family. For the wonderful people at Folgers Coffee, a huge thank you for your continued support in sponsoring our show. We deeply appreciate and thank you for your continued support. It's been great. We couldn't be here without you, and we love you. Our fabulous banner and promo media is courtesy of Steve McGinnis, horror illustrator, fantastic artist. Steve creates commissioned pieces as well as the horror genre, anything. He can do anything for you. Search for him on Facebook and Instagram to contact him. Loving our intro and outro. Thank you to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, Justin Snicker, award-winning composer, vocalist, and musician. You can find his music on Amazon and Bandcamp and stream him on any platform that you use. You can also find Dr. Snick on Facebook and Instagram. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube right now, or if you're watching us on Facebook, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So now we're going to get into, well, thank you very much, Karen. Let's get into, this is really touchy for some people. So I'll let you take it where you feel you want to take it. Like when we spoke a little bit earlier, you had made mention that there was a lot of experiences that, were not of your liking or your doing. Some people have great experiences. You're like, not so much. I wasn't really having a good time with all of this. So where do you want to start with this? When do you feel like, obviously there's military connections in your background, in your family. Where do you feel, or when do you feel that this part of it started for you, and why?
There was an experience that I had with the abduction, where that was the first time I think where I saw the presence of a military, personnel.
Right.
So on this particular time, I was at the time, when I was around, I think 16 years old. At the time, I used to go out into the school grounds in the nighttime, looking up at the sky. I think I felt back then I was doing a little bit of the, what they do in the CE5 communities,
Right.
bringing down, So during those times, I was very in tune. I was in tuning with myself then. I meditated a lot at that age,
Right.
and I used to sit there kneeling or cross-legged, in the middle of what would be the large playground. So I quite
Right.
enjoyed being alone. I was alone quite a lot as a child and as a teenager. Even now I'm isolated quite a lot, because again, it's because of these experiences. So,
Right.
and at this time, I remember I felt sometimes that I was being watched, sometimes from above.
Right.
But I was at the time though in tuning, I guess, to what I would consider to be higher benevolent energies, and trying to communicate, I guess, with them. And I do, I put that at the time. I didn't realize it at the time. I suppose it was only when I was writing the book that I realized, looking back, that's probably what I was doing then, but wasn't really articulating what I was doing. I was just going with my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But on this particular night, I remember I did have this feeling of being watched, but not a good feeling. I've had things with the MIBs and stuff like that as when I was a child,
Right.
and much later on, more encounters with these particular. But
With MIB, yeah. What to MIB, Men in Black? Do you figure that they are government, or do you think that they are ET?
both.
Both. Okay. Fascinating.
But I could be wrong. It's only,
I've heard that.
yeah,
I've heard that.
yeah,
So no,
yeah, I could be wrong. It's only not wanting to step on anyone's, what they think. It's just my personal feeling.
I've heard it. I've heard
Yeah.
it from other people. I've read it. So yeah, I don't think you're far off on that at all. So okay, Yeah, I was
But
just looking for your perspective on it.
then so it was like it was quite late, and I was feeling a bit tired, and so I decided, I'd go back and go to bed basically. But I remember when I was walking back to the house, the house, was in, as I say, it was in a sheet of darkness, so everyone had gone to bed and I was the only one up. So I was like the night owl, like now.
Right.
But obviously now I'm in good company. So and so I was going. I remember I was going up the stairs, and as before I got to the top of the stairs, I remember feeling, I don't need to go to bed. I need to go downstairs and sleep downstairs. So this strong feeling that I should do that, and then so I stopped midway and sort of thinking to myself, almost like a little, should I, shouldn't I, So the feeling was so strong that I went downstairs. So then I went downstairs into what would be the front room. The room was, quite dark. I remember we had thick green curtains that went across the windows. And on the sofa, it was a hot night. It was summertime, and I lay on the sofa. I didn't get undressed because it was hot, and I didn't need a cover over me. And I lay back on the sofa, and I was quite tired. And then I remember I closed my eyes, and then suddenly I had a feeling something was wrong, and I opened my eyes up, and there's something wrong with the room, and then it had so there was, I felt at the time I wanted to get out of the room, but when I tried to make for the door, I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. And I was, I wasn't outside the body. I was there in the room, and I could see everything and hear everything. And then I felt a hand touch the back of my head, and my head was pulled back, and the feeling of the hand wasn't human. So, and I could feel it, but I could move my eyes, but I couldn't move my body. Thank you, Karen. But I couldn't move I could move my eyes, but I couldn't move my body, and I wanted desperately to get out. And I tried to shout out, I knew, obviously people in the house, they would have heard me, but I couldn't. I was shouting, but I was shouting in my head because I couldn't move my mouth. I couldn't, talk. And then I remember that these, there was a grey that approached me, but it was floating towards me. And this particular grey, it had like a wand-like instrument in its hand, which was, as it got closer to me, started to glow. I'd not had that before, but and I remember as it floated towards me, my mouth was open, and this device, whatever it was inside my mouth, and it was burning my mouth, and I could feel it burning my gums, and I was like trying to. I was trying to scream and trying to shout and to get attention, and I couldn't. And I was struggling. I wanted to punch this thing in the mouth or kick it to get it away from me. And I could feel the pain, and I could feel the burning. It was literally, my mouth was burning on the inside, and it was just, I could see it, and it was a typical, grey, the big eyes, the big head. Because at this time it was like, it's getting lighter outside, so you could see, at the time you could see the light coming in from the top of the curtain.
Right.
And and it was going, I don't know how long it went on for. Sometimes it feels like longer than what it is when you're having these experiences because of the the trauma involved.
Right.
And it was really frightening for me, and even now, I feel that emotion coming up from the memory of what occurred.
Right.
And it's that fear, because they have complete control over you. You can't, you can't break this. And I was struggling for a long time, and then I gave way to exhaustion, and
Mm-hmm.
You're just laying there, but you realize they can't control your eyes. They control your body, but they can't
Yeah.
control your eyes. You can't
It's like
move
that
your eyes.
feeling of sleep paralysis,
Yeah.
right?
And then, so when when this being took this thing from my mouth and it stopped, my head was, like the being behind me was another grey, and I felt that they were both like male energies, because often you can't tell, can you?
No.
But you have the feeling that one's one and one's the other. And I remember they, at this time I was still paralyzed, but I remember they moved to one side. But as they moved to one side, it was then that I could see at the time what was a man standing watching in the corner, and he had a military uniform on, which I now can, recognize as a United States Air Force uniform.
Wow.
And he would,
There's a shocker.
and he was just standing there, but he didn't interact. And it seemed like he'd been there watching all that time. And he was like, at the time I didn't know who he was. I just knew he was military. He was United States. What would be an officer, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
He was just standing there, like, with his hands down, just watching, very stern looking. And I was quite shocked to see a human, military person there. And he went to where they were. And then when I was able to move, they had left. But then at this time, you just want to get away. You want to get out of there because of what's happened to you. So as I got off the sofa, I was just able to stand up, and I felt, disorientated. And so then I fell down a little bit, like when you're, if you're drunk, you're not. And then I was able to, get myself out of the room. The first thing I did is I went into, we had a small toilet downstairs, which was adjacent to the front door of the house. And I went in there and I turned the light on and I looked, obviously, to see what they had done to my mouth. But when I opened my mouth and I looked, there was nothing there. Nothing at all. So at this time, I went up, I stumbled up the stairs. I went up to the stairs and I went into the bedroom, and then I just fell down onto the floor. I was exhausted. I didn't tell anyone anything, and I just fell down, and I must have drifted off to sleep. I go into this in much richer detail with the, how I felt and the emotions. I bring it alive in the book, so, I'm not just writing, I show it in detail, and describe the room, what was in the room. So it brings it to a lot, it brings it a better description for anyone reading the book.
Right.
But you see, I was wondering later on, though, what happened? Did they put something in my mouth? Did they take something out of my mouth? Like with, say, an implant or something. But it wasn't until later on, until the 1990s, that I did have an experience that might explain that. So, is it okay to share it?
Yes, of course.
So on this particular day, it's in the 1990s. I was older, and I remember being in the same house, my childhood home. I remember at the wash hand basin at the sink, and I was having to wash my face. I remember something fell out of my mouth, and luckily it didn't go down the sinkhole.
Right.
So
which picture am I showing? Number 3, number 4?
That's not on there, this one, but I'll get back to the other one.
Oh, yeah, okay. Just send it to me on Messenger. It'll be the easiest way, I think. I can grab it from there. Okay.
But anyway, so I picked this object up. It was like really, really tiny, metallic, and it had wires on it, like little, really, really thin wires. You could just barely see it. So I got a microscope, a magnifying glass, not a powerful one, and you could barely see it. And it also had symbols on it, some sort of it almost looked like a circuit, electronic, very, very tiny. Right. And I didn't know what the hell it was, and I thought, how did that get in my mouth? And why did it fall out of my mouth? There was no bleeding or anything, but it wasn't there before. Right. And so what I did was I found a ufologist, investigator, who lived not far from me, and I called him and I said, look, I've had this object fall from my mouth. I don't know what it is. Would you take a look at it for me? I said, it looks like it's got wires on it and symbols. And he said, yeah, okay, come along. And I think he's passed now, the guy. I think he's died, but he's well known at the time within the ufology community. And I think he'd had his own experience that led him into this, like you said, Michelle, it's one or the other. He looked at it for me. So he met me and we went upstairs to his office where he had always files on all his cases. And he had a look at it under a much more powerful magnifying glass. And he said, you're absolutely right. He said, it's got wires on it, like these very thin threads. And he said, it's got some sort of symbols on it. And he said, it's like really odd that it's fallen from your mouth like this. And I didn't connect the dots at the time, but I think it may have something to do with that experience in some way.
Right.
I mean, I might be stretching it a bit, but I'm trying to reason, where did that come from? That may be connected.
Figure out some sort of logic. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but again, I might be wrong. It's just pure speculation. I'm trying to connect dots, but I don't want to connect dots that don't fit. But you don't know that until you investigate it, do you?
Right.
So and so he said to me, you know what? I know somebody in the military that would like to take a look at it. And so he gave it, as far as I know, he gave it to his friend in the military, and he didn't tell me what branch of the military it was. But sometimes, investigative researchers in ufology, they have sources, don't they? They go to.
Yes.
But what was interesting about him is when I was leaving his house, he said to me, do you see that building? Do you see that house opposite? It was an empty. And I said, yeah. And he said, look upstairs in the window. So there was like a net curtain on the window. And he said, do you see anything different? Do you see anything that's unusual? And I was looking. And I saw this movement up there. And then I saw this light. And he said, do you see the light? And I went, yeah. And he said, that's a laser microphone. And it's aiming straight across to his bedroom where he's got his office. And he said, do you know who that is? And I went, no. And he said, it's actually MI5 that are watching me because of one of the cases I'm involved with in the UK. And I could see that the curtains were moving. I could see this. It was like a laser type light. I couldn't see it going out of the window. I could see the light pressed against the window. And he said, he said that his phone had been tapped in the past, and he's had, the police had come and when he said break-ins, and they did actually find at the time what would be now in a like in a old-fashioned, what they are now, the dial phones,
Wow.
And when I opened them, there was something in there, and he had a lot of these problems happening with this. But then later on, I asked him, and I said, "Did you find out any information?" And he said that the person he gave it to could never be found again.
And he kept the piece.
He kept it, yeah. And he said when he asked to speak to this person, the person was no longer working wherever he was working, and so he was never able to retrieve what he got, which was a shame.
That's not the first time I've heard a story like that. There've been a few documentaries even that I have watched where people, sometimes it's a piece of a craft, or it might be part of a chip, and it goes for analysis, never to be seen again. Obviously, there's somebody that doesn't want you to see it. But here's a question for you from Wayne. Here we go.
I had to unmute. Am I okay?
Yeah. You're a bit loud, but we're all right.
I'm moving away from the microphone.
We'll muddle through it.
Thank you. Wayne asks, Michael, did you see any scarring in your mouth after you found that device?
No, I didn't know. There was nothing there. But
because it was
as I said,
tiny.
But there was no blood either, But the night before it wasn't in there, as far as I know. So I don't know, and it was like a perfect square.
Right.
Very, very miniature. Like you would need to look under a magnifying glass.
Yeah. Right.
But and it's quite bizarre when you have that, because you expect to have something. You expect to have bleeding. You expect to have maybe scarring, in your mouth,
Yeah.
you know, and even with the grey, with the wand-like instrument, you know, it was burning in my mouth. I was actually screaming, but I couldn't get the words out. It was in my head. But then when you look, you expect to think, "Oh my God, you know, what have you done to me?" You know, but obviously they did do something to me, but I don't know what. And then, you know, but then it makes you wonder, were they doing something on the etheric part of you?
Yeah.
Oh, he says it makes me wonder what those wires were connected to within your mouth.
Yeah. I know.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it's bizarre, you know. I mean, but one of the ones that I've got the pictures for, the photos for,
yes. Okay.
is the one I talked about is stretching me out. You got a 1 and a 2.
Well, I've got 1 and 2. Okay, so I had them named a little bit differently. So let me just
Yeah,
have a little bit of a look here. Okay, so there's one that's got an arrow going up into a
yeah,
building. Is that one of them?
that's one of them. Yeah,
Okay, hold on. I just have to shrink it because it's a big'ems. We'll put that one up first. Okay, let me get that one up first to share with everybody. Share screen. Bam, bam, bam. Okay, go ahead. Nope, I guess that's me now. Go ahead, stupid computer. There we go.
so
Okay.
so
All right.
this is again, this is taken from now. This is how my childhood home looks today.
Right.
So the fencing that you see around it, that wasn't there when I was growing up. There was a wooden fence that went around the house, and then obviously the school.
Right.
And but this was my childhood house. The room below is the room that I was in when I was having this experience with the greys that were doing this, you know, like operation type thing on my mouth.
Right.
But the buildings, so you can see on the roadside, these are new. So these wasn't there then. I couldn't find a picture, you see, back from the 70s,
Right.
which I would have liked to have had. But
Right.
it's just to show you an illustration, really, to give you an idea.
Okay.
But in this, if you can go to the next picture, please, Michelle.
Okay. Yep.
And then I
Second.
can show you.
Go to that's okay. Number 4, which is the black and white one, I believe. Share screen. Bam, 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 bam. Right there. There we go. Perfect. This one.
So this one, you know, both of these are in my book. This one was actually done by Jason Gleaves. Do you know Jason Gleaves in the
Yes.
UK? Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So these were, you know, lovely guy, and very talented in many
Yes.
different ways, you know. But he done this one for me, to you know, to show the reader, you know, something that I had. So you know, I named this one "Stretcher Him Out," because so in this one particular one, I was at the time in that, what you could see, the bedroom in that other picture, and in this one I remember being asleep, you know, at the time, and something woke me up, something startled me, jolted me awake. Sean, in this particular house, there were 3 bedrooms. You know, my bedroom, I shared my bedroom with Sean, and we slept in the same bed. It was, you know, when we were younger, and he was beside me, but he was fast asleep. And so there was a change again. You always have this change of feeling, an atmospheric change in the room environment when something's going to happen. It's almost like when there's, you know, like when you're going into a house with paranormal activity, and you feel your you know, your energy field it experiences a coolness sometimes,
Right.
or electricity. You know, you just feel this something there. But then
Right.
I had this feeling, you know, again, something's not right. So I felt like I was frightened again. I felt something was going to happen. I didn't know what it was, but so what I did is I turned over, and there was nudging Sean, wake up, and I was like, you know, like that to him, and he wouldn't wake up.
Right.
You'd normally wake up, wouldn't you? And
Yeah.
and a lot of the time when this things happened to me, and Sean was there, he was sleeping. It could never ever wake him up,
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the bed, I saw three of what would be now, the greys,
Right.
and they were standing at the rear of the bed, and two of the greys broke away from the three, and they floated towards my side of the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time they'd done this, I wasn't able to move again. I was paralyzed. I mean, our parents' bedroom was literally next door, and the door was open a little bit, and they never closed their door. But so when all this was going on, they never,
Mm-hmm.
you would think you'd hear something,
Right.
but they never
Right.
ever come to help me
Right.
to
Well, maybe they
and
were in some sort of a deep
yeah,
slumber
I
as
mean,
well.
you expect sometimes, your parents to rescue you from monsters.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Well,
then,
yes, and I think
but
that's
then
part of the trauma, isn't it?
they,
There is no
yeah,
rescue.
no, there is no rescue. But on this particular night, so Sean wouldn't wake up. My parents didn't obviously hear anything. My brother, brothers were in sleeping as well. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember floating up on the bed,
Mm.
and I was being directed then to do it. But see, this is the interesting thing. Again, and I'll explain this in a moment. In this particular abduction, there was a stretcher used. It was a
Mm-hmm.
black stretcher, and I was placed floated down onto this stretcher. And so again, I wasn't able to move, but I could move my eyes,
Right.
and I could see, that these were grey beings.
Mm.
And I remember being floated up once I was in the stretcher. I wasn't able to move. Perhaps, this is because they don't want you to run, or they don't want you to fight with them. They want to have that control. And then I
Mm-hmm.
remember the stretcher rising up above the bed and moving over Sean. And it was, it wasn't being carried, it was floated. So
Right.
you had one, you had two of the greys at the back of it floating. I mean, it's bizarre, really. It's surreal when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
In the whole setting,
Yes.
you got this going on. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
how the hell can this go on? But this is, you don't think it as a child, but you do later on
It's surreal.
when you're trying to understand this. When I was trying to understand it in the 1990s,
Mm-hmm.
it took as long as that. But
Mm-hmm.
and then there was one grey that was in front of this, and we were going towards the windows,
Mm.
and we just went through the glass, and
Right.
the glass didn't break.
Right.
But
Right.
but if you go back to the other picture, please, Michelle, the
Okay.
first
Yeah.
one.
All right. 1 second here. So I have to stop that one. So the second one,
with
which
the,
was the one I
yeah,
showed just before this one.
yeah, with the arrow type thing,
Okay, 1 minute.
yellow.
Okay, I'm going to shrink that back up. God, that's a big guy right there. Hold on. There we go. All right. 1 second. And we're coming back. Come on, work with me. Okay. You'd think this thing was behaving like it was 2 a.m. over here. Computer's exhausted. Okay, here we go.
So where the arrow is, this is where the stretcher and the greys come out from that window. So we
Right.
went through the glass
Mm-hmm.
on there, but then on the roof, it was like what would be a makeshift balcony for the room
Right.
below. So as a child, as I explained, I used to get up on the fences and jump on that roof and jump off of that roof. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, why not? This must be a little boy thing.
maybe preparing me for the other stuff later on. I don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe.
But,
Yeah,
I used to jump off my parents' roof.
did you?
Oh yeah.
Is that to go escape from something?
No, I
From
used to, because we used to have the TVs with the antennas.
Yeah.
I would climb that and then just watch the stars.
The daredevil you are.
3 brothers.
I know the feeling. Yeah. And so we used to, but when we were on this, you see, it was in the middle of the night, but there must have been someone around, surely. And the thing is that I was put down onto this roof,
Mm-hmm.
and then just where where it's going in the opposite way, going above the roof, the yellow.
Yes. Yes.
So I was floated up with these three beings up above the roof,
Mm-hmm.
and I could see with my head back, I could see through just from the peripheral vision, from the side of my eyes. I could just make out the top of the roof, and I could see the buildings on the opposite side, which at the time would have been in the far corner, which would have been a warehouse. It used to be called a Page Group,
Right.
and that building there would have been that warehouse, but they've obviously transformed it into which are flats, I think.
Right.
And on the opposite side of that, on the other far building, that was always a pub. That went back like to Victorian times.
Right.
And that was there, and I could see these. It was in the nighttime. Obviously, they're closed. There's a police station just on the opposite side of that building,
Right.
as what I spoke about. And there was always police cars tearing up and down that road. Even at night with their
Right.
blues and twos. But when I was going up, I could see a light above me in the sky, and I was being taken to that light, which it must have been a ship of some sort.
Right.
And then as I got close to the light, what I remember next was it was daytime. I was in bed. It was the morning. It was morning. And when I looked at my pillows, it had all blood on it.
Oh no.
And then it was from that day onwards that I always had nosebleeds. I remember going forward, I had lots of nosebleeds. My nose would just pour with blood. And even today, I suffer with sinus problems. I have really bad sinus problems. And so, but I don't have no memory of what happened after that. So that memory is fragmented.
Right.
But then, what I find interesting again, and I'm a bit, on the fence with this again, is if it was because the stretcher is, when you got an abduction, the methodology, what the Greys use, it seems a little bit more human to me.
Right.
Why would the Greys use a stretcher?
They wouldn't. I agree. Yes. Yes.
That's very unusual.
Yes.
The Greys, we all have ways of doing things. The Greys have their ways. Human beings, the military, have their ways of doing things.
That's right.
It seems a bit too, where the Greys,
they would be more sophisticated.
Exactly, but
yes.
Exactly, but with the abductions I have, I've never had them use a stretcher. But why would they use a stretcher? But at the same time,
they would just, they would just levitate you.
But at the same time, exactly. But at the same time, were these the Greys there working again with the military?
Yes.
I don't know.
Also, that's been said before. Yeah, you're not the first person to question that.
But with the, I wouldn't have said that. But with the stretcher, I think introduces a more human theme as well to it.
Yes, it does.
And so from that, I've looked at other cases, and there's no other cases that I could see that used the stretcher with abductions. That was, however, until I found a book, by the Scottish author and investigative researcher, Malcolm Robinson.
Right.
So he wrote a book called the A70 UFO Incident, which was based in Scotland, and it involved an abduction of two guys. So I wrote it down because I'm not very good with names. Gary Wood and his friend Colin Wright, which was on August the 17th, 1992. Where they were removed from their car by, what were, I guess, Greys.
Right.
And the interesting thing is one of them was placed on a stretcher. And he was placed on that stretcher. His friend wasn't. And again, the stretcher wasn't carried. It was floated by these beings into a craft.
Right.
So there is a comparison between the two. And again, why would they be carrying when they didn't need to do that? The Greys don't often use props like this. This seems more human to me.
It absolutely does. sound and have a human feel to it. I wish we had more time because it's we're at the top, we're past the top of the hour, and I wish that we had more time to get into it. But I would love to do a part 2 to all of this if it's
Sure.
something you're interested in, and we can definitely talk about a date and more content, because there's just so much just based on our conversation. But for now, I've already gotten the signal. Come on. That's what
Yeah.
it's like, okay. So, yeah, if you're willing, I
Thank you.
could
I
definitely.
mean, there is. I want to bring up, not today, obviously, that next time, that experience that I had outside the body, where I said that the military were waiting for me. The military that were
Yes.
waiting for me were
Yes.
alphabet agencies.
Yes. So let's hold that thought and we can
Mm.
start there. And I will go ahead, when I set up the next show, once we can work on
Sure.
that date, is put it as a part 2 to this one.
I'll make sure my mic works.
Yeah. And I will save these last 2 pictures as well. So we
Sure.
didn't get to show those. So I will save those in my file here, and we can go from there. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for that's our producer. Thank you, Joe, honestly. But thank you, Michael. And I'm so grateful that you came on tonight and shared your stories. I just
Thank you.
feel that there's
Thank you.
so much more to say, and a whole other show, absolutely. So I will be in touch with you,
Thank you.
and I will send you all the links that you need to be able to do what you need to do with this show.
I was going to say, thank you, Michelle and Amelia, for having me on as your guest.
It's been an
obviously,
honor, Michael. Thank you.
And everyone that's come and listened to me. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, pleasure. Thank you.
Guys.
All right, Michael. Thank you. Well, everybody, we've come to the end of another fantastic segment that could have just gone on and on. It's just full of information. And I've spoken with Michael earlier. And like I said, there's so much more to come. So hopefully we can make that work. So big thank you to Michael Kameron for tuning in tonight, or joining us tonight, and all of you for tuning in tonight. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee for sponsoring the show. Also, big thank you to Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, and Steve McGinnis, the artist behind all of our artwork here. Tomorrow night, another new face comes to the show. Michael Peter, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Langevin. And he's going to be discussing his book series. Get ready for this one, guys. Travel Tales from Unknown Realities. Yes, this is something he's done, and apparently something he can do quite easily. So tune in for that. And thank you again